Hello and welcome to the Human Design Catalyst number 40. Today we're going to be doing a special Valentine's edition, a Valentine's special for partnership analysis. I don't know if you can see the sign back there. And I'm here with two of the founding members, Michael Stenbaek, who made our lovely sign today. 3 5s welcome. And C. Alex Clark, another founding member. So today we're going to do partnership analysis, and we're going to be looking at the charts of JayZ and Beyonce Knowles. And I'm using geneticmatrix.com, the charts on there. So if you just go to geneticmatrix.com, go to people search, you'll find it. And I don't have it set up to screen share, so I'm unfortunately not going to be able to show the chart. But if you just go to geneticmatrix.com, you can search for Beyonce, and you can search for JayZ. And you'll find it. So right off the bat, we see Beyonce is a 1-3 generator, or I guess manifesting generator, a generator with manifesting potential. She does not have the direct connection from the sacral to the throat. However, most human design computations would still classify her as a manifesting generator. And then JayZ is also a 1-3, and we see that he is a pure generator, and in that neither of them have emotional definition. So I'm just going to put their charts side by side for those of us here, and for those following along, I would recommend to do the same. I'm just going to put the charts side by side, and you can take a look and start to examine them. So they're both on the right angle cross of consciousness. How funny is that? Mm-hmm. They're both and our founding member of the Human Design Catalyst series in High Desert Human Design, C. Alex Clark,
also
right here, is also a cross of consciousness.
I'm more like Beyonce though.
Yeah, you're more of a Beyonce cross of consciousness. Well, because Beyonce's a Virgo also, so you actually are on the same cross of consciousness. Yeah. So your birthday is within a few days of each other. So yeah, so if you're at home, you can just, what I've done, I mean you can't see this, but on my screen here and on the television, we basically just have their two charts pulled up. So yeah, they're both cross of consciousness. They're both generators of a type, I guess in Beyonce's case, she's a manifesting generator, technically speaking. And they're both 1-3s. They're both investigator martyrs. So I'm just going to kind of go through a little checklist that I have here, which is from the Partnership Analysis book. And I find that it's a great checklist just of things. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Things to go over when you're doing a human design reading for a partnership. So, when you have a couple come in and you're going to do a reading for them, let's see. Here we go. So first you do the individual analysis, which is looking at each chart individually. So you just kind of start looking at the characteristics. So in this case, we start to kind of look at, what's just going on with them individually. Like JayZ is split definition, Beyonce is single definition. JayZ is a wide split. So what's that going to look like? Being wide split definition, he's going to have a very different, he's going to basically be designed to connect with people. Whereas Beyonce is very self-sufficient and doesn't necessarily have the same needs in connecting with people. But you kind of look at their charts individually. And this would be something that, if these people came to you, you would just say that you want to give them each individual consultations to make sure they know their strategy and authority, and to make sure they kind of have their own reading. Now, the next is in the reading checklist, if the partners have the awareness, to go into the chart Sun, Earth, and Nodes. So this is something that you find a lot of times in charts where you'll find the nodes and the sun Earth oftentimes connect. Oftentimes, like I have 12 and 11 in my nodes, and that's part of the Cross of Eden. So I will often meet people who are on the Cross of Eden. Their sun and Earth are the same as my nodes. And that's something interesting. Here we don't actually see that. So that's not happening here. But we do see that they both have first and fifth line nodes, which is really interesting. JayZ's personality nodes are in the first line and design nodes are the fifth line. Beyonce's personality nodes are the fifth line and design nodes are the first line. So what this signifies in a partnership is essentially that if you have the same lines of nodes, then you're going to have the same kinds of people in your life and the same style of meeting people in your life. For instance, both my personality and design nodes are third line. So what that means is I'm going to have people coming and going throughout my life, bonds made and broken. I'm also going to have a lot of connection to third line type people, crazy, experimental, eccentric, out there, but also sometimes some of the other third line things, wealthy people, that's connected to wealth. It's connected to, there's all different third line themes, builders, constructors, the third line is connected to the exotic. So I'm going to have people in my friend group from all over the world, from very distant, remote places, and also being so experimental from all different age groups. So since I have third line nodes, that's, very, very different, for instance, than someone who has second line nodes. I was looking at my ex-girlfriend's chart, and she has second line nodes. I have like 3,000 friends on Facebook, many of whom, I have friends from almost every country in the world. I have friends from the Middle East, all over Asia, and Africa, and Russia. I have an online friend from Transylvania, 20 miles from Dracula's house, South America, Central America, just literally just all over. And she's second line friends, and she has like 200 Facebook friends, and she's extremely specific about who she lets in and who can connect to her, because the second line nodes are going to be all about, 99% of people are not correct for me. 99% of people who come to meet me are not going to be right for me. And there's a whole art form to just extrapolating what the nodes mean in terms of the forces that you meet in your life and who your allies are. But you can read about that kind of separately, going into nodal analysis, going into environmental analysis, going into perspective. But we look here and we see first and fifth line nodes, and so we see
they are opposite.
Yeah, they are switched. So the switch is that it's Beyonce's environment that's first line, and it's her perspective or view that is fifth line. Meaning that first line environments where she notices fifth line things. She notices who's conditioning and who's being conditioned. She notices who's guilty, who's responsible, who's supposed to fix it or not. But it's in a first line environment, which is a fear-based, survival-based environment. Now, of course, this is a level up from color. This is more on the surface than color. If you have a first color environment, that's also a fear-based environment, right? Survival environment. But you can think of color as a variation of line. And for Beyonce, it's a first color environment. It's an environment of people trying to survive. It's a tribal environment because the first and second lines are very tribal compared to the third and fourth, which are individual, and the fifth and sixth, which are collective. And you basically have because the first and second line are part of the splenic binary, third and fourth are the ajna binary, and then the fifth and sixth are the solar plexus binary. But in any case, we can see for JayZ, he's suited for fifth line environments, and what he's going to notice there is more of the first line. Now, I'm not looking at what colors they have, so if you really want to get to perspective, you have to look at the color. And if you really want to get to what environment is correct for them, you have to look at the color as well. But we see that their nodes are actually really compatible, which is interesting. Sometimes you see people who have very incompatible nodes. Doesn't mean the relationship can't work. Every relationship is a limitation. And what you come back to again and again with human design is that you shouldn't you should get rid of the notion that you get to fully be yourself, all of yourself in a relationship, because you're only really fully being all of yourself when you're alone. And the relationship is a limitation. And so if you have third line nodes and your partner has second line nodes, that's one of those limitations, that you're going to have very different people in each other's lives. You have very different friend groups, and your friend groups might not be compatible. And you're going to wonder as a third line why that second line node partner of yours lets this one person in, but not all these others. Why do you only let this person in? You won't let any of these other people. You know, you have walls up for all of them, but you let this person in. Why them? What's so special about them? But, you know, they're not going to really be able to answer that. It's just how the second line works. It's made to be a very, very narrow channel that only lets in very few things. And of course, as the not self, it'll be the wrong things. But if they're following their strategy and authority, they are going to let in the right forces. So the next thing you go into, just as a reminder, is to sleep alone.
Sleep alone.
You'd be amazed how much people have a hard time with this. People have a really, really hard time with the whole sleeping alone thing. It's unreal to me. I mean, I did partnership analysis for a couple that had been married for 14 years, or they've been together 14 years, and they were married, and they still don't want to sleep alone. You know, even years after finding out about human design, they occasionally sleep alone. You know, but for me, I've gotten to the point with enough sleeping alone and enough development, you know, of my journey in human design, that I notice so much. If I fall asleep on an airplane with strangers, I notice, let alone with somebody that I actually spend a lot of time with. With strangers, it's a little bit nicer because you don't burn out on how they wire you up. It's still really bad. But with somebody that you're really close to, sleeping alone next to them, they become more and more invisible to you. You ever meet those couples where the couples don't see what's special about each other and they just don't appreciate each other? It's because they sleep next to each other, and so it's like they become so accustomed to the frequency the other person puts out, they don't notice it as a frequency anymore. They become immune to it. All the sparks go away because they're basically burned out. So if you want to continue to see your partner as a real person, as a unique person in their uniqueness, and actually be able to feel what their aura feels like in your presence, don't sleep in the same bed as them. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, they just become invisible to you.
Why do you think people want to do that so much?
Yeah, I don't know. It's, you know.
Because TV tells them they got to.
I don't think it's just TV. I mean, it's a seven-centered thing. It was survival in numbers, power in numbers. But the other one that is much harder for people, and some people anyway, is animals. Yeah, animals shouldn't be in the same room as you either. Yeah. I mean, dogs can have a way bigger aura than a person. You can feel that dog from across the room. So do not let your pets be in the same bed or in the same room while you're asleep. And it also counts going through walls and stuff. People don't realize how hard it is to sleep alone in certain apartment buildings and so on. Yeah. And just a side note on what we really see in each other. You can only really see somebody when they have, you can only really see a characteristic of somebody when they have the whole channel and you have nothing in that channel. That is then what you see in them. So it's kind of interesting. So, okay, so partnership analysis, center configuration. So this is what centers, how the centers are configured, who has what the other person doesn't, who's conditioning whom. So we see right now that Beyonce has the head that JayZ has undefined. Beyonce also has defined throat, which is undefined for JayZ, and defined G center, which is undefined for JayZ. Now, for his part, JayZ has a defined spleen, which is undefined for Beyonce.
And the head.
Pardon?
And
Oh,
the head.
sorry. Oh, yeah, I said it backwards. Yeah, sorry. So they each have two. JayZ has head and spleen. Beyonce has throat and G center. Thanks for the correction there. So these are going to be very strong conditioning forces. You know, when they're together, JayZ is going to exert tremendous mental pressure on Beyonce to think about things. He's also going to activate her spleen. And when you activate someone who has undefined spleen, they can feel really safe, they can feel really good, they can feel really warm around you, but it can also get them, it can activate their not self aspects as well. And then conversely, Beyonce has the defined throat, so she can really get JayZ talking. She can get him to be expressive by activating his throat, even to the point where he's talking too much. And with her defined G center, he can lose himself in her identity. He can lose his own fragile identity and, suddenly start to like the things she likes and do the things she does and kind of lose himself in her. And so realizing these conditioning forces, he has the upper hand with the spleen in that he can take or leave her. He doesn't hold on to things. So he can take it or leave it. Whereas she's going to be much needier in that sense, as everyone with an undefined spleen has around someone with a defined spleen. The undefined spleen is always going to be clingy. Ra talked about how difficult it was for him dating people with undefined spleen. He himself had a defined spleen, and he said, it was so uncomfortable for him to date somebody or be with somebody who had the undefined spleen as the not self, because they were so needy and so clingy and kind of constantly smothering him with not letting go, just holding on to things.
Well, then she's more secure by being a single definition.
You should get closer, because we've had a complaint on the YouTube channel that people can't hear other people talk. So.
But then Beyonce's also more secure in that she's a single definition, right? In a relationship, she's less interested in bridging anything because she's just one island of energy centers, right?
Yeah, she has less need for the relationship. However, even though she has less need for the relationship, I would say, especially because he has a wide split, JayZ is probably still going to have this kind of narrative of, I don't need anybody, and other people are always a problem. It's different than a simple split, where a single gate can bridge that, and where your partner has that bridging gate. That's where you really see the split definition getting hooked on somebody. They're hooked on them because that person has the bridging gate they crave. In JayZ's case, yes, he's going to want relationship, but he's going to be a little less, hooked on it. Now, the other thing is they're both 1-3s, so they're both consciously looking for stability and security and order. But they're both unconsciously ready to throw it all away. They're ready to throw it away in a heartbeat. And so without them realizing it, they're actually constantly yearning to reinvent that relationship through breaking up and getting back together and breaking up and getting back together. And so that's something else to kind of take into account, is how profile plays out. But yeah, you can see how when one partner has, activates the other partner's not self, it's just something to be aware of, is how they're affecting you. If I were doing this reading, I would tell Beyonce, when you're around JayZ, he is activating your head and exerting tremendous mental pressure on you. He's also activating your spleen. He's conditioning you in this way. And if I would tell JayZ, well, hey, she has this strong, defined G center connected, powered by her sacral, that's what she's, so you can lose your identity with her. And then she's also activating your throat. So be really conscious about not interrupting and not talking too much, not saying too much, and so on, because you're going to have this sort of activation that's going to make you express a lot more than you would otherwise. So the next thing we look at the nodal line themes. We already kind of did that. Then you look at compromises. Now, compromises is the really juicy part. This is, if you just do one thing for people that come to you for partnership analysis, to look at the compromises. Because they will, this is like the equivalent of cold reading from, how a psychic will tell you all about your life. Well, compromise has the same effect on people, because of all the issues people run into in relationships, the one that they're most aware of is compromise. In fact, that might be the only one they're aware of, because it's extremely, extremely frustrating. It can leave people feeling so bitter and unrecognized if they're projectors, and so disappointed if they're reflectors. It can make them so angry if they're manifestors. Compromise is where it is. And it's basically when one person has the whole channel and the other person has one of the gates, one of the two gates of that channel. That's compromise. And what happens is the person with the whole channel will dominate in the same way as if the other person had no gate activations at all. But the one that has half of the channel is going to have a really hard time treating it like a dominance. So a dominance relationship is when you have nothing in that channel, the other person has the whole channel. That's easy because you just let them do it. So for instance, we look at their dominance here, and we see that JayZ has the 50-27, the channel of preservation. It's all about being responsible and taking care of things and preserving them and maintaining them. It's the upkeep. It's fixing it up. It's the caretaker. It's a tribal splenic channel that's all about caring, basically. You care about things, and it's like the preservationist. And Beyonce doesn't have that channel, and so she's going to be able to easily surrender to let him do that, and also let him bring those qualities out of her, so that when she's around him, she will start to notice, oh, don't put the cup on the wood, it'll leave a ring. Or, oh, we better do this and this and this task to make sure that the upkeep is maintained. It's all about upkeep. It's all about maintaining. It's like the responsibility to protect something. Ultimately, it's even child raising, the responsibility to protect a child and make sure that it survives the first 7 years of its life when it's extremely vulnerable. Virtually no child can survive on their own for the first 7 years. If they're 7 or 8 and they're left in the forest or something, they might survive. But under that, they can't. And so that's what that channel is for at a genetic level. But
she has the 8-1 and the 56-11.
Yeah, so then she has other ones that he is able to then surrender to. And so the funny thing about dominance, and we'll get back to compromise, but the funny thing about dominance is that if you asked JayZ to describe what Beyonce is like, he would describe her as the 1156 and as the 8-1. He would not describe her 515 because that's a compromise. And we don't see the other person well through compromise. We see them in dominance. So he would say, she's an amazing, talented singer. She's so creative, so verbally gifted. That's all the 8-1. She's a verbal gunslinger who's able to come up with these incredible vocal expressions. You see the 8-1 in a lot of singers and stand-up comedians, people like that. And then the 1156, he would say, oh, she has so many ideas. She's such a gifted storyteller. She's so stimulating to be around. She's constantly sharing the experiences that she had. She's a real searcher and a wanderer, and kind of a seeker. And she's always on the lookout for these new experiences. And he would be describing those channels in her. He would not be able to describe her 515 accurately. However, when you start talking about compromise, I guess I'm just saying, like, he'd be hyper aware of the 515. He just wouldn't describe it as something in beaming terms as qualities of her that she shines to the world. He would instead say, oh, she's always late. I can't get her to do anything on time. We have plans and she's 3 hours late. She marches to the beat of her own drum, and it's super annoying because I'm just trying to get there and she's taking hours to get ready, because that's the 515. Our friend Greg has the 515. A friend of ours has the 515 and invited us to a party at 2:30 in the morning. And we went, and then we're like, this is kind of cool. It's like after party. He's like, no, it's been going since 9. And sometimes I'll invite him to things, and he'll show up at like midnight, and an hour after everyone's left. My friend Johnny in Seattle also has the 515. And there were multiple times I invited him to parties, and he showed up long after it left, and the lights were off, and so he just went home. Because they just will not show up on time. You never, ever, ever want to have an appointment to meet a 515 at a certain time. I refuse to do it. If I know someone has the 515, I simply say, here's where I'll be, and I'll text you when I leave. Catch up with me wherever, whenever you do. Because I'm not going to meet them at 5 o'clock. They'll show up at 7:30. I mean, I'm not talking about 20 minutes late. I'm talking about like 3 hours late. Wow. These people, and as Ra says about the 515s, as kids, their parents could never get them to clean their room because it's a timing issue. It's not that they won't clean it. They'll clean it when they want to. See, all three of the channels going from the sacral to the G center, the 515, the 14.2, and the 29.46, are all tantric channels that have to do with rhythm and flow. Because generators are ultimately designed to be in flow. I have the 4629, so I know all about this being in flow. The 4629 is the experiential side. It's not about patterns. It's not about extremes in the way the 515 is. It's about being in an experiential flow where when I sacredly say yes to something with that 29, I'm committing myself to be with that until the end of it. And I can't break it. It's impossible for me to break the flow. Manifestors are flow breakers. Manifestors can break the flow. And you can say, yeah, you just kick the flow out of everything. But in any case, so that compromise there, the advice that I would give JayZ would be just surrender. Just let her define the flow. Just treat it like a dominance. Pretend you don't have that gate 5. Like literally let her define when you leave for the party. And you'll have a much better time. Because let me tell you, it is hell. I've been with the 515 trying to get them to leave. Same thing. He said, well, the party starts at 8. It's now 10. It's at the point of fashionably late. Let's go. And you don't get there till 12:30, and it's so frustrating if you're trying. Now, for me, I don't have either of those gates, so my frustration is different. It's because I have the 4629. So they're competing, which is it's not compromise, but it's also difficult. If anyone has 2 gates connecting the same centers, they're going to compete. They don't really work together. It's and that's true even if in your own chart, personally, you have 2 channels connecting the same 2 centers. It's kind of difficult. And we know somebody who has 3 channels connecting the same 2 centers. It's very difficult. Those channels compete with each other, and that person has a lot of inner conflict, and also they don't always operate as they should, because like the experiential channel, for instance, is made to have a beginning, a middle, and an end and be done with it. But the logical channel is made to do it over and over and over again. So the person ends up doing something over and over that they were supposed to only do once. Likewise, it corrupts the other way. The logical channel is supposed to build the pattern and perfect the pattern over time, but the experiential channel says, I'm bored of this, let's move on. So they don't end up perfecting it as long as they should. So these are actual problems. It's especially prominent with the format channels. Really big problems, particularly health problems, you find when you have more than one format channel together, which is difficult. I have the 952 format channel, the logical format channel. It's very dry, analytical, logical, pattern-based. When I'm in a relationship with somebody who has one of the other format channels, or even just in the room with them, it can be a really oppressive, stuffy energy, and it can actually cause health issues. Because my form of health is to have recurring problems over and over and over again, because it's 952, so the problems keep coming back again and again, and I keep working on them. Somebody who has the 5342, they're made to have single experiences with a beginning, a middle, and an end, because it's the experiential format. So their health, they have a single health issue that comes to fruition and then goes away. And I will actually influence them to keep getting that health issue again and again and again. But they will influence me to not try to perfect it or change it, again, the corruption. And the 360 is supposed to have health issues that just come out of the blue and spike. And it'll go much more extreme. They'll make the other. So this is just a little side note to say that, it really is important to know the people you're surrounding yourself with and the people whose close auric contact you have. I'm not saying a relationship is doomed when you both have different format channels, or if you yourself have multiple format channels. I'm just saying to be aware of that and to do things to kind of compensate for that. You're going to need a certain amount of time to be alone from each other, and the amount of time you need away from each other is going to depend on factors like this. So
JayZ's got the 6447 compromise.
Yeah, so JayZ has his own dominance where he's dominating on the 6447, and Beyonce only has the 64. Now that's simply that he's going to make sense of things, and she's going to have to accept that. She's going to be really confused about certain things, and she's going to, my friend Daniel Blue, one of the other early members of High Desert Human Design and of the Human Design Catalyst series, he has the 6447. I have just the 64, so I have this exact configuration where I'm like Beyonce there. And I was trying to figure out what time measurement a particular phrase was, a drumming phrase. And I was in the car with my friend Jocko, who's a jazz musician, and we were talking about it. And neither of us, we were so confused. We couldn't figure out what the measurement is. And then we were trying to like tell Daniel, because he's also a musician, and he goes, "Oh, that's just a dotted 30-second note." We said, no, it's not that. No, because look, when it starts here, he's like, "No, it's not a 30-second note." I'm like, "No, but..." So we were arguing that, no, it's actually much more confusing than that, because he's like, "No, it's not confusing at all. Like, this is what it is." And later we realized that he was right. It actually is a dotted 30-second note. It took us a lot longer to figure that out, writing it out on a grid and looking at it. But, the person with the 6447, it doesn't mean they're always going to be able to do that. I mean, they're going to be confused a lot of the time, too. They're going to, in fact, because JayZ is a defined head, he's going to have a much busier head than Beyonce. He's going to be actually very busy with confusion. But he'll have those moments of clarity where all the confusion goes away.
Doesn't he have a song called Moment of Clarity?
Does he?
I think he does.
That's perfect. I did not know that JayZ has a song called Moment of Clarity. That's great.
Then that's like
Beyonce's son is in that compromise channel, that compromise game.
Oh yeah, so that makes it so when you have a compromised son, that makes it so hard. And her son is in an undefined center. Her son is in the undefined head, whereas his son is in a defined head. No, it's not. Oh, his is in a defined sacral. Sorry. So he has a defined center that his personality son is in. She doesn't. And her personality son, and then it's a compromise. I would say that's one of the hardest compromises.
And that's where he has to compromise is in his.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they both have to compromise their personality sons. His personality son 5 is compromised by her 515. Her personality son 64 is compromised by his 6447. That sucks. That is so bad. These are like the most painful. I won't say they're the most painful. There's 2 other areas that are extremely painful compromises that bear mentioning. One is in the love gates. If you have a love gate, there's 10 or so love gates, and you have to compromise in a love gate, which actually, I think, isn't 15 one of the love gates? Yeah, 15's a love gate. So that's extra painful than that 515. But I think it's actually more painful if it's the other way around. If she had the 15 and he had the whole channel, or vice versa, that would be much more difficult, because when you have the love gate, all it wants in a loving relationship is to hook in to its harmonic gate. It wants to hook into the other half of the channel, and it can't, because that's what compromise is about. It gives you the illusion that you can hook in. It feels like an electromagnetic at first. You think you can connect with them, but you can't. You're not on the same wavelength. I know this with you, C, because you have the 1222. I only have the 12. So I feel like I can connect into your 22, but I can't. That 22 slot is already occupied by your own 12, and it's not going to let me get in there to connect to it. So, so that's one. And then the other one that's extremely painful compromise is when you're a split definition and you have a bridging gate and you're looking for the harmonic there, and the other person has the whole channel. It bridges your split, but not in the way you want. It's very uncomfortable for them, right? You're a simple split. You're looking for that one gate to connect your 2 parts of your body graph, and instead they have the whole channel. And that's also really difficult, because you feel that connection. The connection works. It overrides it, but you're still, something's lacking, something's missing, something's unfulfilled in you. And of course, that's something you can decondition from. I mean, all of this is the limitation of the relationship. It's not saying they shouldn't be together. It's saying, wow, you signed up to constantly feel that your 70% of your personality and your life purpose and your ability to express yourself is not able to plug into the other person. And you're going to feel more understood and more heard and more activated and come to life more around someone else who you don't have that compromise with. You just have to accept that limitation. You can be married to this person, and your husband or your wife or your non-binary partner is going to not be able to connect with you in this very fundamental way. I mean, but again, it's something you deal with. I've dealt with that in a most recent past relationship where she had gate 36, personality sun gate 36. I don't have 35. I don't connect to that. Someone else does, and then they connect, and light up that person, right? And, so it can be hard both ways. It can be hard for Beyonce and JayZ because each of them feels that the other isn't really actually activating them, or especially Beyonce feeling like JayZ, because he doesn't have that 47 hanging there, isn't really actually lighting her up and bringing her to life and letting her like fully be energized and charged by him and like able to express herself fully. But it can go the other way too, because JayZ can have the problem seeing her light up around someone else and going, wow, she's actually really shining around that person. Well, guess what? It's because they have gate 47. And he has the whole channel. So again, it's going to be this constant feeling that it could happen, but it doesn't. That's what's so frustrating about it. With that whole channel, it gives the illusion of being able to connect, but there's a disconnect. They're not actually connecting in that way. And the same is true for him with his gate 5. He really wants that person with that gate 15 to be able to connect to. And she'll see him around someone with gate 15. And he'll be lighting up, but not with her, And so that's one of the really hard things about relationships and one of the kind of limitations human design helps you realize is that you can be really jealous of somebody because of how much they're activated. These dormant aspects of them come to life around someone who isn't you, and you can be so frustrated. The same is true when you look at the bonding strategies. Just as a small side note, the bonding strategy of the second line, for instance, is shyness, boldness. Well, any person in that second line's life that they bond with is going to tend to bring out one half of that binary more than the other. So all the second lines, they're gonna be either shy around you or bold around you. And they're going to be either shy or bold around someone else. Now, this was from, I believe it's from the 36 roll gates, where Ra talks about the example of a parent or two parents of a second line. One parent, the second line is shy around. The other parent, the second line is bold around. So that means, the kid will sing around mommy, but will never sing a song in front of daddy. Right? And that can be so heartbreaking for daddy because he wants the child to be bold around him. What's wrong? Why do you just clam up and close up and shut down and never, you're so shy around me, but you're so bold around her, right? These issues, whether, in any situation, this is what human design can really help with partnerships, because it can help you learn to accept the limitation of what you bring out of that person. And what you activate in them, and what role they play, and what side of the coin it falls on with you. But it can be so hard. Imagine the fifth line, seducer, seduced. That means that maybe you were never able to seduce this person. They pursued you, they seduced you. And you're never able to seduce them, but someone else is. And you watch them get seduced by someone else, and you feel so powerless because you will never have the power to seduce them, even though it's your wife or your husband, or your long-term partner. So I guess what I'm saying is that one of the things that human design reminds us is that all relationships are a limitation, and that we only have a very specific interaction with that other person, and that so much of our envy and jealousy and self-hatred and regret and all of these things come from comparison. Comparison is the enemy of differentiation. When you really are looking at uniqueness and differentiation, you don't care about comparison, because you say, what I have with this person is completely unique between me and them, and nobody else will ever experience what it's like for me to experience being with this person. But as soon as you start to compare and say, well, you're shy around me, but you're bold around them, well, you seduced me, but that person seduces you. As soon as you compare, suddenly you're in the not self homogenized plane again of trying to live up to a homogenous standard, and you lose. What is it?
And trying to be everything.
Trying to be everything, exactly. You're trying to be everything. You want the relationship to be everything. You want to have all 64 gates activated. You want to have all 9 centers activated. You want to have all 36 channels, whatever. So, yeah, so that's the real gift of human design when it comes to relationships, is this gift to be able to see the relationship in its uniqueness and, without comparison.
So they're what, 8-1? 8-1?
Oh, I haven't looked at that yet.
6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. 6-3.
No, they have at
Oh,
least.
6-3. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, you're right. The ego doesn't.
Doesn't get
The ego, the solar
Doesn't get
plexus, and the root,
activated,
none of
yeah.
them are complete.
Oh, you're right. Wow, that's amazing. The root isn't complete with all those.
3.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here, this is the. I guess would be called the theme, and the themes, of course, are. We have these little rhymes like 5 and 4, not a relationship anymore. 6 and 3, better to be free. 7 and 2, work to do. 8 and 1, have some fun. And 9 and 0, nowhere to go. 9 and 0, nowhere to go. And so these are the rhymes that Ra came up with as little mnemonic aids to think about what happens when a certain number of centers are defined together with that person. So in this case, they have 6 out of 9 possible centers defined together. The ones they have undefined are the root, the solar plexus, and the ego. Well, the first thing you're going to notice here is that whenever somebody with a solar plexus is around, either Beyonce or JayZ, or both, are going to be drawn to that person. They're going to be drawn to them, not the same way that a projector will be, where they get drawn into a deep one-on-one connection, because they're, Beyonce and JayZ are generators, but still they're going to be interrupted because it's going to be so hard to resist the draw of the solar plexus. It's of the defined solar plexus. The same way animals are drawn to humans, because animals have 2 hanging gates pointing at the solar plexus, but they do not have the solar plexus themselves. They do not have emotional awareness, but they sense it on the other side. They have the open plugs waiting to plug in to the human solar plexus. And mammals love the human solar plexus. It feels so good to them. That's why dogs and cats want to nuzzle. That's why wild animals are so curious and come up to, what is this thing this person has? Especially if you have defined solar plexus. But even without that, if you have 22 or if you have 49, or you're going to plug into them, and even without that, they're still going to sense your solar plexus, even the undefined solar plexus. So yeah, that's one of the things. The other is the ego, right? They're going to have this open ego where they're going to be open to others who have defined ego coming in and sort of pulling them away from each other or leading both of them somewhere. I mean, they have room, because they're both generators, they have room to go to different places together with other people. It's a spacious relationship. Ra says the 6 and 3 relationship is like the 60s ideal of free love. It's absolutely about freedom, and there's no glue holding it together. And what's unfortunate is they will each meet people they have 8 and 1 with or 9 and 0 with, and they will immediately get glued to that other person, especially if only one of them has 8 and 1 or 9 and 0 and the other doesn't. Right? Because then the other is going to have a 6 and 3 or a 5 and 4 with that person and not have that glue connection, and one of them is going to get pulled away. And I've seen this happen again and again and again. I mean, I've been in a 6 and 3 relationship where I have 5 and 4 with somebody else. Literally 5 and 4. When you have 5 and 4 with somebody, there's like no connection to that person. And my partner's had 8 and 1 with that person. And so my partner was going to go off with them for hours and like have endless, connection, and I don't. And that is a challenge.
They
but
do
it's part
have
of the limitation.
lots of similar possibilities for connection. Like they don't share any channel. There's no
They don't have companionship at the channel level. They have companionship at the gate level.
And they heavily.
Yeah, they do have a lot of the same gates. The 46, the 2, the 26, the 35.
18.
I mean, the thing is, the not self doesn't give a crap about companionship. And that's what's funny is that the relationship might actually be better than they realize. Because the more companionship you have, generally the better the relationship is, in terms of actually allowing each other and supporting each other in the process of differentiation. I'm saying better here in the sense of not trying to change each other, because that's the real thing. That's what it's about. If you're trying to change your partner, that's hell. And the only real good relationship, the only better relationship, is the relationship where you accept your partner exactly as they are and you embrace them in their differentiation and their uniqueness. You don't try to change them. And the more companionship you have, the less chance you're going to try to change them, because you're not even going to notice it. It's so invisible. The not self is not interested in companionship. It is interested in the genetic imperative, which is difference. But difference is not differentiation. It's weird. It's this weird paradox where being attracted to difference it's the opposite of self-love. It's like not being interested in what you already are. It's being interested in something that's so different from you and trying to be that. And so it has a homogenizing effect because it goes into that general conditioning field of trying to be what you're not. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yes, the companionship is great. Companionship is only great with awareness, and when you're following your strategy and authority, then it's the best thing ever. I mean, one of the originators of mybodygraph.com and a great computer programmer in the human design community is a reflector who was born a few hours apart from his wife. And they have 0 and 9, not 9 and 0.
That's cool.
They have all the same gates, and they have no channels, and they have no defined centers.
Wild.
And so they have 0, but they have companionship. So, looking at these themes, the 6 and 3, it's a limitation. The limitation is that, and I talk to other human design analysts who have who have 6 and 3 together and have been happily married for years, and what she said to me was the relationship works great, but it's not about the relationship, if you know what I mean. Their relationship is not about the relationship. Their relationship is about their individual lives. And they're in a relationship, but it's not about it. And, it's a limitation. 6 and 3 is a limitation. To me, it's a very difficult limitation. Maybe not as hard as having a split. Having a split in your relationship is very difficult. They do not have a split. The other advantage that they have is that it's very rare to find a relationship that is not emotional authority together in a relationship. Even if both people have undefined solar plexus, more often than not, the solar plexus becomes defined through the relationship, which means that the same rule as having solar plexus authority, there's no truth in the now, applies to the relationship as well. Interestingly, I was just on the Human Design Interactive Facebook group where Chetan Parkin was arguing that that's a really poor description of the whole no truth in the now. He really doesn't like that, and he was saying he doesn't like that because it lets people think that because they have defined solar plexus that they have to constantly wait all the time to make decisions. When what it's really about is there's no truth unless you have clarity, basically. Which is the same thing. I think that's how we all understand it. He was just saying that some people are artificially waiting longer than they have to. Now, I haven't seen that. I think everyone with a defined solar plexus should wait longer. Just if you have defined solar plexus, wait even longer to make the decision, please. But he was saying that he's seen people wait past the moment of clarity because they're trying so hard to, So there you go. I mean,
But how are you supposed to know what the moment of clarity is?
There's no nervousness.
But I mean, until you allow yourself time to.
I think so, but I think it's also a recognition of when the nervousness is gone.
Probably
learning to recognize your own emotional
better
states.
Better to wait longer.
Yeah,
right?
it probably is, but
why are you so antsy?
No, I know. Yeah, because there's a But in any case, they do have that advantage that they do not have the defined solar plexus together. Now, that can also be a relationship that is kind of lackluster and kind of gray until somebody with a defined solar plexus comes along, or until a transit comes along that activates the solar plexus, and suddenly they're full.
I would say they probably have very full lives on their own.
Well, and there's probably a lot of other people around. I mean, that's the thing to look at is what the lifestyle is. If you have a personal assistant around, the same thing with people who have splits in their relationship, and they get really distraught about it. Wow, should I break up? We have a split. Well, make sure that you spend almost every day, or a few days a week at least, the majority of days, going out with your partner to cafes and public places where you're sitting in the aura of other people, because that's going to bridge your split. Simple as that. It's only a problem when it's not being bridged, And when the two of you are on a desert island together, that's hell, because there's nothing to bridge it except the transits. So make sure you have enough people in your life. Same for a 6 and 3. 6 and 3 needs the community to help out. They're not going to be fully satisfied with just each other, because they're going to be curious about what is that ego frequency like, what is that root frequency like, and most of all, what is that solar plexus frequency. frequency-like. Incidentally, JayZ, I kind of don't like to say this term because it sounds so negative, but JayZ has what is termed the Heartbreak Hotel in human design analysis. The undefined ego, the undefined solar plexus, and the undefined G center, which are the three strongest conditioning centers of the not-self.
Wow.
In the not-self hierarchy,
G
the ego...
number 3?
Yes.
Damn.
And it's the three most painful. If you think about it, the undefined ego, I'm worthless, I don't deserve this. The undefined solar plexus, I'd better hide who I actually am and never show anybody my true self. The undefined G center, I'm totally lost, the grass is always greener, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I don't feel any sense of home.
Damn.
And I feel homeless, you know.
Wow.
So you can see it's the Heartbreak Hotel. It's very hard. It's very hard. But again, with awareness, these things can all be transformed. My advice, again, doing an individual reading for JayZ would be the advice I give everyone with an undefined G center, the people-place advice. You only meet the right people in the right place, and you only get to the right place through the right people. So you have to practice discernment, and that can be so hard to do, especially if you have all the conditioning of the undefined ego and the undefined solar plexus, because then you're going to be doing so much out of guilt and obligation and out of striving to keep your promises and not letting people see your true self and all this stuff. So you're going to agree to do all sorts of things you don't even want to do just because you're trying to pretend to be something you're not. Okay, so type to type, generator to manifesting generator. Well, at least Beyonce is a generator with manifesting potential. She does not have the direct connection. But still, I would talk to them about what it is to be a generator, what it is to be a manifesting generator. I would just explain the differences a little bit. How manifesting generators can multitask more, how manifesting generators can start a lot of projects and then abandon most of them, and how generators are very sequential, one at a time, and need to finish what they start, things like that. But the fact that they're at least both generators, generally speaking, even though there's the MG generator split, between the two, I think that this is less of an issue than a generator-projector relationship or a generator-manifestor or a generator-reflector. The non-sacral beings also have issues, the projector-manifestor relationship, the projector-reflector, and the manifestor-reflector relationships. They have their own issues, but they tend to have different issues than generator with non-sacral beings. I would say the generator-projector issue is one of the most problematic. Again, it's just a limitation, it's something to understand, but I see it because one of the problematic things about the generator-projector relationship is that it's so hard for the projector to get out of it, and it's so hard for the generator because they get more attention from the projector than they've ever got from anybody in their life. So it's like the ultimate ego rush. I mean, Ra talks about this. The same way that Ra calls out the 4-6 as the particularly most difficult profile to be, and the ones that have the most perversions and hang-ups and relationship problems and all these issues. And he says that really the 4-6s have it the worst. He also says the projector-generator relationship. I mean, in his Projector Signature Series talk, available for free on Jovian Archive, he goes, you'd have to be insane to want to be in one of these relationships. That being said, I have loved that insanity more than once in my own life, because it's a very special relationship. It's just, you have to understand type-to-type dynamics. As a generator, we take it for granted that we can get truth from somebody by asking them. You want to do it? Yeah, okay. Can I do this? Sure. Want to do that? We take it for granted. And with a projector, you can never ask them a yes or no question and get an answer. And I've had, a generator who's been in a relationship with a projector for over 10 years say, I just want a simple yes or no answer. He's never going to get it. He's never going to get it. And from the projector side, of course, they have their own complaints. The generator is basically force-feeding them either satisfaction or frustration. So if the projector is like the ultimate sex slave and the generator is satisfied all the time, great. But if that generator is frustrated, that projector is being force-fed at a deep energetic level all of that frustration and amplifying it and taking it in and basically shouldering the burden of it more than the generator does. Because the undefined centers get the worst of it. The undefined center ends up actually shouldering the burden. All the undefined solar plexuses out there are shouldering the burden of all the unresolved psychic shit that all the defined solar plexus people are dealing with. And similarly, the projectors out there are shouldering all of the frustration that the generators are dealing with. And it's really unhealthy for them.
Yeah.
They're here to be around. Yeah. Satisfied generators. Okay, so that was the type to type section. Profile, they're both the same profile. There's a nice companionship there.
Do you think it's easier for people with same profiles?
Yeah, I mean, I think companionship is always easier. There's just less attraction.
Right.
And that's the trade-off. If you're dating somebody that was born a couple hours apart from you the same day, same year, that's great. I'm all for it. You just are not going to have the electromagnetic, and you're not going to have the exoticness, and your genetic imperative is not going to be going, ooh, different.
Right.
So.
But at least there's some commiseration for us 4/6s.
Yeah. Okay, relationship authority and decisions, communication. So this part of it, I'm just going through the partnership analysis checklist. It's really just what is the relationship authority? In this case, it's sacral. So that's great. They each have sacral authority individually, and they still have sacral authority. Mm-hmm. It's much harder when they both have sacral authority, and then together they activate the solar plexus, and suddenly they have to get used to not being able to trust their decision making in the moment because they're so high or low on their shared supercharged, electromagnetic wave, which is going to be an even stronger high and low than if they had defined solar plexus, right? This is a good note here in the partnership analysis book. Treat each other correctly with respect. So respect means something very specific in human design. It's not just this general wishy-washy abstract concept. Respect means very specifically, just a moment. So what respect means is going to be treating people according to their strategy and authority, meaning asking a generator a yes or no question is respect. Not asking projectors, but continually inviting them or making sure they actually are welcome to share, actually welcoming them in a real way. Respect for manifestors is informing manifestors. And respect for reflectors is not rushing them to make decisions and allowing them to observe until such time that they've come to a decision on their own and, hearing them out. Respect for a self-projected projector is inviting them to talk through things and so on. It's basically, that is what respect is. And it's amazing how this fundamental thing is lost in so many relationships. I can't tell you how many generators with projectors are asking their projectors yes or no questions and getting so frustrated with it. Why don't you ever answer me? Why can't you tell me yes or no? Do you want to or not? That's it. And then similarly, you have projectors who are very, bitter about their generator because they're not actually asking them yes or no questions. They're asking them what they think. And they're asking them why they did something. Generator doesn't know why they did it. Generator has no idea why they did it. Ask them a yes or no question. Do you want some ice cream? Are you mad at me? Uh-huh. Are you going to still be mad at me if I go get you ice cream? Yeah. What about if I, did this fun dance and put on the song for you? That's what the projector has to do. They have to play 20 questions or 200 questions with the generator. And that's what generators have to do with each other too. And that is respect. You're having a fight. You don't say, why did you do that? You don't say, are you, even really big abstract yes or no questions are not as respectful. It's more like, do you want to be alone right now? And they're like, do you want me to sit here next to you? Like that. Like that's respect. Like you literally get people to, be in that flow again, that responsive flow. And for manifestors, it's simply to inform them. You just keep the manifestor informed. You just literally tell them all the information and wait for them to initiate what they do with that information. The manifestor will initiate based on the information you give them, or they won't. The other thing to talk about is splits. There are no splits, except JayZ is split, but JayZ is bridged by Beyonce, so there are no splits in their composite. Like I mentioned earlier, if there are splits, generally the advice is to be private and public, as Ra calls it. Go somewhere you can sit at a booth at a cafe and you're around other people's aura.
What about if it's a split with 9 centers filled?
Well, if any sort of split has the possibility of being bridged,
Mm.
and I'm just talking about a simple split. It's probably a little different if they have more than one split. But even in that case, I think it's healthy for them. If it's a triple split relationship, I would give it similar advice as a triple split person as an individual, which is to
Go to a bunch
sample
of places.
a lot of different ways of bridging it, and kind of think about it like a Rubik's Cube or like a multifaceted gemstone. You're looking at it through different angles and so on, from different angles. The electromagnetics. So we already talked. We didn't really talk about electromagnetics much. So what electromagnetics do they even have?
But none.
They have none.
None.
Wait. Yeah. No, they have none. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, there's no good or bad in that. It's just a limitation. I mean, electromagnetics are the things you love and hate about people because they're qualities that you each bring out of the relationship, and it's like every hanging gate that you have yearns for its harmonic, but is also hates its harmonic and antagonistic to it to a degree. It's love-hate. It simply sparks. Everyone says, all those things that were cute in the beginning of the relationship, now I can't stand them. That's electromagnetics. It is the love and the hate. It's you want the other side of it, but you're also kind of frustrated by it. For instance, I have gate 28. I'm yearning for gate 38. That's a love gate, by the way. That's a love gate.
Cool.
Gate 28 is love with purpose. It's finding a higher purpose through love. And I yearn for that 38. At the same time, someone who just has 38 is stupid. It's literally stupid. There's no intelligence there. 28 is all about the intelligence to know what is worth fighting for. 28 lacks the energy to fight for it. So I know what's worth it, but I don't have the energy. But 38 will just fight for the dumbest things because they don't know what's worth fighting for. So again, it's a love-hate thing. I'm like energized by 38, by the fighter, by that fighting spirit, but I also kind of hate it. And that's true for all of the harmonics. We talked a little about companionship. So the last little note here in partnership analysis is surrender. And that's really what human design is trying to get you to do, is to surrender to the limitation of the relationship. So many people, when they do the partnership analysis, their first reaction is to leave the relationship. Their first reaction is to find something better, particularly single definition. Single definition, maybe triple split as well, always feels like there's something else out there. The split definition understands compromise. They understand and they can become wise about what ways you need to compromise and how to compromise and how to allow the relationship to exist within a certain limitation. But everyone struggles with this. And so what human design advises is not for people to break up because you're 6 and 3 or you have a split or you have these compromises. It's simply to surrender. Ra was married for 25 years to someone he had some compromises with, and they were 7 and 2 together, which is work to do. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work in that relationship. And as long as you surrender, that's it. That's it. That's all you can do. You don't try to fix it. You don't try to change it. You can't change that chemistry. You just accept it. You surrender to it. Doesn't mean you don't break up. I mean, that's something that only your strategy and authority can determine. And that can also be very hard. It can be really hard to end a relationship that's not good for you, particularly for projectors. They get stuck in relationships for 7 years a lot of the time. Projector bitterness is such a slow thing to grow. It takes at least 7 years for them to become bitter, and it takes at least 7 years for them to become sweet again after they leave that. It's not like the generator where, it happens in the moment, moment to moment to moment. But regardless, the point of human design is not to get people to break up because they have characteristics of the relationship that are difficult. It's to accept and to surrender to the limitations of that relationship.
Or either there's probably a reason why there's not a human design dating app, right?
A lot of people tried to make human design dating apps. I think people are working on one now. The only perfect human design dating app would be a registry of everybody that was born the same day as you.
So you could avoid that?
No, because that's the real companionship. That's the only real companionship. And it's funny because nobody's interested in that. They all want the electromagnetic. They want the person that has the most electromagnetics. Yeah. That's not a good relationship if by good you mean one that supports your differentiation and your uniqueness. That's a relationship where you're going to try to change each other. Now, sure, it can work as long as both people are surrendering to it. I mean, any relationship can work if you're surrendering to it. But, ideally, the main thing to come around to is trusting your strategy and authority, really trusting that to guide you and to choose your partner, and then surrendering to the limitation of that relationship and not trying to make it more than it is. Think of your relationship as a very small thing. People make relationships way too big. Your relationship is a tiny subset of who you are. Because any relationship with any other person is going to be just a tiny fraction of your totality. And with different people, they get to see different parts of you. And surrendering to that particular limitation, surrendering to the fact you only get a tiny part of them also, of this vast possibility that they embody. That's what it's all about. Yes?
Are there any different things that are different about like sparks or compromises with that crazy four-way channel? Or that set of...
Oh, you mean with the integration?
57, 20, 10.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the keynotes that I have for that channel, and then you can see how those themes play out in the relationship. So the integration bundle, that's what the question was about, is 34, 57, 10, and 20. So 34 is what powers the manifesting generator to be really busy. It's all about just being busy. They're busy, busy, busy. Do, go, go, go. They're just super busy. I have 34. I mean, I'm busy all the time. And 20 is all about right now, in the moment. We're doing it now. We're not going to wait. We're just going to do it now. So someone who only has 34-20, we say, is very busy in the now. They're just constantly busy living in the moment. So if you had that as an electromagnetic with somebody, you have 20 and they have 34, you're going to be really busy together. You're going to be like a manifesting generator whirlwind together. You're going to be multitasking, doing all these things. One of you will be on the phone with one person, the other will be on the phone with the other. You'll be driving across town or zipping around. That's what the electromagnetic theme is going to bring out for you. Because, I have 34, but I don't have 20. So I have all of this potential to power being busy. Oh, yeah, so there we go. So, we do that together. We bring that out of each other. How many errands do we run? How many, even when we're doing things together, we're kind of fast about it. We're just like, do it, get it done, move it here, put it there, let's get it, But then, say you have 10. Well, 10 adds the keynote.
I have 10 also.
Okay, so there you go. So having 10, the keynote for 10 is for yourself. Or being yourself, or for yourself. It's relevant to you. So someone who has 34 and a 20 and a 10 together, they're really busy in the now, but they're actually doing it for themselves. It actually validates them, and it's connected to their life purpose and to their direction in life. They're not just busy being a super slave for other people. They're busy actually going a certain direction in life. Now, 57 is the awareness of all of this. So we could say that someone who has 34, 20, and 57 knows that they're busy in the now, and they know what they're actually doing. They know what they're busy doing in the now. I guess we could even say that 34 keynote is doing. So with 57 is knowing, you actually know what you're doing when you have those two. Cool. Which is funny because you see the people with the pure 34-20, they don't even know what they're doing. You talk to them at the end of the day, you're like, what did you do today? Like, what didn't I do? I did 50 things. I don't even know what I was doing half the time. I was just going from one place to the next. So you can see that how it works in electromagnetic. If somebody has the 57, they're going to bring all this awareness into it. The other person only has the 34-20. They don't actually know what they're doing. Then they're around the 57. Suddenly, the 57 is brought into this whirlwind of activity, but the 34-20, that manifesting generator, is going to actually start to be aware. Like, wow, I didn't realize I spend 3 hours a day just driving back and forth from this place to that place. They're going to actually start to notice it. And if someone has the 10, like you both have, it's going to actually feed and fuel their direction in life. And it's going to be more about where they're actually going, G-center stuff, and what they're actually doing. It's going to be about the self. 10 is the gate of self-love. It's the gate of doing things for yourself. It's treading on the tail of the tiger. It's doing things that are appropriate also, and there's other aspects to 10. But generally, it's going to connect, someone who has the 34-20, and then they meet someone with the 10, and suddenly you're connected there. They're going to start being like, I'm not going to do this for that other person. Like, I have this goal in mind. I'm going to do it for myself. So yeah, so I mean, it is a complicated little bundle, but you can string the keynotes together the same way you would with any other channels. And you simply just look at what each person is bringing into that and what patterns are. Yeah.
The 2010 would be like, I'm not. Whatever I'm doing is what I'm doing for myself.
Well, they're not going to be doing a lot. They're just going to be
That's
very
it.
aware in
Right.
the now.
It's
It's
just
like
like,
it's just
I'm
pure
here.
awareness in the now.
Whatever I am, I'm doing
Or not
it.
even awareness
and it's
in the now.
for me.
Not even awareness in the now because they don't have the 57. So it's not even awareness. That's a funny one. Just the 2010, literally just the 2010 is just like being yourself in the now.
Yeah.
Without even realizing it.
It's just-
Without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until
bad.
people come along and make me do things.
Yeah.
And that's that one. So that's another kind of self-love, right? And then that, because that would be a projector channel then if it's not connected to that. So
Yeah,
it would
it's just
have
like-
to be invited in order to express that self-love. Right?
Yeah. It's not going to be, it doesn't have the energy to actually do it. It's just until somebody else gives it the energy. The invitation brings the energy. The 5710 is another projected channel, and that's a really interesting one where they don't necessarily always have the energy to be themselves, but they do have the knowledge of who they really are. They really know themselves. It's like they know who they are, they know who they're not. And that's one where you find people who oftentimes they are their own work of art, so to speak.
5710.
Yes, I actually recognize them a lot because they often look like models. They have they're incredibly physically fit, and they're incredibly it's really weird. It's a weird one. I've seen it again and again and again where 5710 people are their own work of art. They've made themselves into the work of art that they display to people. And then the 3410 would be like the energy to be yourself, like busy being yourself, the power to be yourself in some ways.
So if you had the 3420 and then the other person has the 3410, it's not like so they would be seeing the overlapping part. That part that's overlapping with one person always half of it, they would still do the surrendering thing, right?
Well, yeah, it's a good question of, is one of those a compromise or how does that really work? And this has come up before in the human design ones. I only consider it a compromise if I do not consider it a compromise. I'll put it that way. I consider it a compromise if the person has just, one person has 3420, the other just has 20.
Oh, yeah.
That's a compromise. But if one person has 3420 and the other has 3410, I consider it to be that they each have their own channel. And I don't even necessarily know that the channel is probably connected. It's an interesting one because, integration circuitry is different in this way. It doesn't really operate according to the same rules as the other.
So it's like a special kind of collaboration rather than compromise?
Yeah, because those 4 gates all work together to ensure survival. And I feel like those gates are all open to each other. They're fundamentally open to each other. Because if you have 3410, your 34 is still open to the 20 and it's still open to the 57. And your 10 is still open to the 20 and to the 57.
So
they're open to each other. Even though the energy is flowing, they still have an openness to the energy flow from the other gates.
Like, for example, although the 2010 is a complete channel, we still have electromagnetic because you have just the 34.
Yeah, I'm still electromagnetically connecting.
To
I have 2
my
electromagnetics with you.
10,
Yeah. See, as the 2010, I have 2 electromagnetics with you when we create 2 channels together, the 3410 and the 3420. So we're busy together and we have the power to be ourselves. We empower each other. And we empower each other too. So yeah, that's how I look at it. I see that bundle as each gate is open to the other 3 gates. So, all right, this has been session 40 of the Human Design Catalyst series. Thanks all for watching. Bye.